So I'm here with a true Canadian legend. This guy has run in pretty much all federal elections, by-elections, provincial by-elections in Ontario since the 70s. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records. He made a very famous appearance on Dragon's Den, the legendary engineer himself, Dr. Spock, John Turmel. John, I have to say, it is an honor to finally speak to you.
Well, pleasure meeting you. This is my hard hat symbol I've worn for 40 years.
Yep.
Just to make sure that if they're laughing, they know they're laughing at a guy with an engineering degree.
You know what? You know what, though? I think I've called you the most underrated individual in Canadian political history because I've read the manifesto of the Popper Party. I've kind of studied you a bit because I'm actually very interested in monetary reform. I don't truly understand it completely, and that's why I want to talk to you. I know that you were a member of the Social Credit Party of Ontario, and I call myself a social credit conservative. So, before we get started, can you just explain to me what your version of a perfect monetary system is within Canada and why that benefits the average Canadian?
Okay, well, I've got a six-minute poem I can read.
That's perfect.
In a nutshell,
yeah,
I'll do that later. In a nutshell, I want to run the bank like poker chips.
Okay.
So, you give me your marker, and you promise to pay it back by working, and I give you an interest-free loan of brand new poker chips.
Okay.
And that's it. If everybody can open a Bank of Canada account so they can borrow interest-free chips from the Bank of Canada, well, then that solves all the problems. Matter of fact, let me read my 1974 poem here, and let me find it. There's 1974. Okay, this is the whole thing, hopefully explainable by...
and I just want to apologize.
It's at my site, okay?
Okay.
It's at my site, smartestman.ca.
Yep.
/1974.
Okay. So smartestman.ca/1974. That's where you can find this poem.
That's right.
Okay.
I also have smartestmanonearth.ca.
Smartestmanonearth.ca
is for short. Now, how dare I? Well, I explain in all videos all the time that I have the same education as Mr. Spock on Star Trek.
Right.
He's the guy who figured out the odds of winning, and he was a science officer. And I have a degree in systems engineering, and I was teaching assistant of Canada's only mathematics a gambling course. Mm-hmm. And if you Google for Great Canadian Gambler, I come up. Or the professor at the Trump Taj Mahal in the movie Rounders. So I'm a well-known professional gambler. Yeah. And if there's anybody who's got as close to education as Mr. Spock, the science officer who figured out the winningest way to go, that's me. And that's why I dared take out the site smartestmanonearth.ca and smartestman.ca for short, and no one's laughing.
Right.
So here's my poem now. Oh, Canada's debt national had much stability till 1974. Starts exponentiality. Okay? You see it start to grow. The same in Ontario.
So 1974 is when the debt begins to grow out of control.
That's right. Same in Ontario. Same in Quebec.
Right.
All right. Same in Ontario, Quebec. Debts doubling over time. Did debts all start to grow in big coincidence? Sublime. The Bank of Canada once loaned to provinces in Fed without the interest that causes budgets to turn red. It financed major projects, made St. Lawrence Seaway B. Trans-Canada was highway financed sea to shining sea. Not only infrastructure, also paid for World War II. With interest-free cash, we almost nothing couldn't do. The only question then was how the tax should be assessed. For goods and services, a simple formula to test. For services, they levied tax at end of every year. For assets, tax to pay depreciation. Very clear. with taxes only for depreciation and repair, so easily affordable without the banker's share. But in 1974, Pierre Trudeau cut the feed, ruled no more interest-free loans for infrastructure need. All governments must borrow now new funds from private banks and raise new tax to pay new interest with bankers' thanks. Now, we're told that government finance is only for the sage, too hard for Mr. Average. It's studied to engage. But does it have to be well understood by only few? Or can the problem be explained for Mr. Average too? When you were little, did you ever dream of printing cash, filling up your wallet with some money in a flash? Creating money accurately means to have the plates. The stamping of some paper into notes best demonstrates, or stamping metal into coins, or blips computerized into your bank account deposits, checks now authorized. So whether paper, metal, volts of electricity, to have the plates is printing money absolutely free. Right. Now, if you printed it to spend, the others would bewail. They'd call it counterfeiting and they'd send you off to jail. But what if government would let you print it up to lend, with only what you can collect in interest to spend? If you could print and lend 1,000 out at 10%, you'd make 100 interest on printing that you lent. But if you could print up and lend $1 million out, you'd get an extra $100,000 for your fee on debt. Right. If government stops using its own plates and comes to you, 1 billion printed nets 100 million revenue, with everybody being taxed to pay you interest. Of all the scams in history, to have the plates is best. Nice. Though never spending, only lending, riches do await to all who with the plates become loan sharks to the state. And though to join the few who thusly profit, one might dream, wake up to see we're all the victims of this greedy scheme. Though governments of old had treasury run money plates, without the interest of middlemen at rip-off rates, most governments today to banking industry have lost control of money plates. So interest is now a cost. I'll pay my tax for army and police to handle strife. I'll pay my tax for doctors, nurses who protect my life. I'll pay my tax for all engaged repairing road and sewer. I'll pay my tax for social servants helping out the poor. I'll even pay my tax for bureaucrats with no regret. I only object to paying tax for interest on debt. I'll gladly pay my tax for people's time and useful toil, but taxing me for money's time will always make me boil. We now know the unjustly cost that makes our tax inflate, and only interest is what we must eliminate. The best solution is to get the plates back from the banks. Have Bank of Canada control for service charge and thanks. But worse, in 1968, Pierre Trudeau lifted cap on interest from 6% to 60%, setting trap. In 12 years, central bank rate rose to 22%. More tax to service greater debt at higher rate was spent. Percent of 30 was the rate at chartered banks we saw. Percent of 40 rate by private lenders under law. 1 million families evicted. Mortgage could not meet when Pierre's high rate death gambles put it foreclosed on the street. Mortgage means death gamble. The reason foisted on them for such suffering high rates was interest will fight inflation, economic states. What fool believes that raising costs can lower prices high? Yet fall for it they did. The biggest economics lie. So that's the big lie of economics, that interest fights inflation when it actually causes it.
Right, right. So your thing is to get rid of the interest rates on borrowing from the Central Bank of Canada, then.
Yeah, and then you pay off all your interest-bearing debts. I get to that at the end now. Absolutely. Pierre Trudeau is responsible for debts out of control, for lifting rate cap, ending interest-free loans, his role. Oh, Canada sure could have offered all a living swell. But Pierre, in 1974, turned heaven into hell. While Justin could make loans again without the usury, Can we expect but more bad fruit from father's crooked tree? An engineering dropout, beta boy, though blooded blue, like dad a silver spooner with for numbers talents few. Our taxes disappear since over 40 years ago for interest on Trudeau's debt we didn't have to owe. If we got back $2 trillion taxed since Pierre helped banks us fleece, reversing algorithm gets back 60 grand apiece. I could do that. If Mr. Spock could at Computer Central all alone debug bad code to save a planet from the danger zone, no help he needed from the low-tech others with no clue. What Spock can do, the engineer says, I can do it too. My Spock fix gives you online Bank of Canada account. A credit card without the interest on due amount. When all your payments go against the principle of debt, you're someday out of debt, and that's as good can get. So that's the solution. I'm going to say that quatrain one more time. My Spock fix gives you online Bank of Canada account. Okay? Log on, open an account. A credit card without the interest on the due amount. When all your payments go against the principle of debt, you're someday out of debt, and that's as good can get. Okay. So that is my poem explaining the Spock fix, which is how I can reprogram the whole planet's banking system.
Right. So so people would have access to loans from the Bank of Canada, all of us.
Any central bank, the U.S. Fed, the British, Bank of England, right. Everybody should have a central national bank account.
Right.
And then that's interest-free.
That's interest-free. That you loan. It's a loan, of course, so people don't think, we're just taking money. And then you pay.
It's like a casino that gives you 100 chips when you give them your IOU.
Absolutely. Okay, so it'd be like a casino. Interest-free, you pay it back. So that's a true social credit philosophy.
Those are social credits.
Right, absolutely. Social
I'm
credits.
the only person ever uses the plural, okay?
Right.
When you get an interest-free loan, that is a very social credit.
Absolutely. And,
when you get interest on the loan, it becomes anti-social credit.
Right. Because, you see, a lot of people like to talk about our freedoms in terms of, our guns are being taken away or this is happening, property freedoms. But it's very rare that people ever talk about financial, economic, monetary freedom, which is probably the most important one of all. Because people don't understand that we are essentially slaves to the central bankers, who put high interest rates. They raise it when they want, lower it when they want. Would you say that the central banks were the cause of the 2008 financial crisis?
The banks, it doesn't have to be central, are the cause of all crises. Because if they ran it like poker chips, you don't have any crises in a casino.
Absolutely.
You ever seen a casino say, sorry, I don't care how much collateral you got, I got no chips. It would be too stupid.
Yeah.
So, if you understand how casino banking works, then you can appreciate more the ripoff. My first 2-line poem, in politics. Why represent our collateral with their chips for a fee when we can represent our collateral with our chips for free?
Yes. I like how you have a poem for everything. You're like my grandfather. You have a poem for everything. It's like
40 years I've been at it. I started the poetry in 91.
Yeah. So, why do you think I don't know if you've ever seen any of my videos. I call Justin Trudeau a tacky-headed Matt Daddy. He's a con artist. And I call Pierre Trudeau the cuckold because of private matters. Why do you think Pierre the cuckold Trudeau did this to our banking system? Why did he do this in 74 as all the other nations, you said France and all the other provinces? Why?
There's France, 1974, starts exponential growth.
Yep, and that's the debt growth.
Well, look at how many people actually understand it now till I explain it to them. So what are the chances that a lawyer would understand the finance system then? Honestly, He was just doing what he was told. I don't think he had the mental agility that so few have. Look at Jesus said when it comes to money, they will forever be hearing without hearing and seeing without seeing or understanding. Okay? That's Jesus saying when you try to explain interest to them, forget it. Can I go to the Bible for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now they asked Jesus, why do you speak in parables? So they don't understand what you're saying. And he says, I speak in parables because to those who have abundance will more be given. From those who don't have abundance, even what they have will be taken away. That's why I speak in parables. Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, that verse is repeated 7 times in Scripture. 4 times in the Bible and 3 times in the Nag Hammadi scrolls. Even his brother Thomas repeated that one, Thomas 95. Jesus said, to those who have abundance will more be given. From those who don't, they take it away. Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, in 1995, I got voted Internet Kook of the Month, July, for arguing that Jesus Christ spoke in differential equations. That statement that is replicated 7 times in Scripture, the most often replicated words of Jesus, is an explanation, a differential equation for how interest works. Imagine, he spoke in parables to hide his mission that had something to do with how interest works. Now remember, to those who have abundance, positive, will more be given in the future, right?
Right.
And to those who have no abundance, negative, even what they have, we're going to take it away. Well, that's how interest works, taking from the negatives to give to the positives. Right. And that is a differential equation explaining how interest at a bank account works. And then Jesus continued when he explained that that's the reason for his mission. He said, it's been given unto you to understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. Right. Now, I'm saying Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And 50 years ago, they were laughing at him and say, hey, the Romans are still in charge. We're still slaves. Ha, ha, ha. It wasn't at hand. And 2,000 years ago, they can laugh at him and say, ha, ha, still we're in debt up to our necks. The kingdom of heaven was not at hand.
Right.
Maybe he didn't mean soon. Maybe he meant it's right beside you. All you got to do is get rid of the loan sharking, and you've turned hell into heaven.
Absolutely. So
and that's it. So that's the neat thing when Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. All you got to do is Paul Corinthians 2, chapter 8:14, the differential equation for how Jesus's Christian interest-free communes worked. Your abundance, you're not going to get more. It should at the present time be a supply for their want if they're short and they can plant it. So that later their abundance may be a supply for your want if you're short. And in that way, he who gathers much has much, but not too much. And he who gathers little doesn't have too little.
Absolutely.
That's equality. So Jesus said, as long as you put your spare interest free, then you're going to benefit from the success of your neighbors.
Well, a lot of this stuff that you're saying, like, interest is actually a sin in the Bible, as far as I know. Usury, it's a sin. So we're all
change the definition. The powers that be changed the definition to high interest.
Yeah, but it's
but the Bible proves that ain't so. Ezekiel said the wicked is he who exacts usury or excessive interest.
Right. And interest meaning...
knew there was a difference.
Yeah.
Here's the difference. If I lend you 100 cows and I say, give me back 105 cows next year, and you got a bull, you might say, well, that's pretty reasonable interest, right?
Absolutely.
So, because they got babies. But if I give you some gold and say, come back with more next year, now you got a problem because they don't have babies. Absolutely. So my granddad Adelard explained to me prime thing about economics.
That's a very good theory. That's a very good saying, too.
Money has no babies.
Absolutely.
Arana Turmel, my granddad, told me. So you cannot pay interest on money like you can pay interest on cows. But if I asked for 200 cows back, that might be deemed excessive interest.
Right. So
But if
I just want to go to the past a little bit. You said before 1974 things were okay, but I mean, we never really had. Did we have? We didn't have interest free banking back before 1974.
no, people didn't, but the governments did.
Oh, the governments did. Okay.
Yeah. So, in other words, we were suffering the personal loan sharks in our private lives with our home mortgages and car mortgages, but the government wasn't taxing us to pay interest.
Oh, okay. I see.
But in 1974, Pierre said, hey, let's start borrowing too. And then we can tax everybody to pay the bank's interest.
And so that's why we are in this current debt crisis that we're in today.
That's right.
And that's why until we change the monetary system, we're not going to ever get to a point where our debt is going to be manageable. So we can end up like Greece.
Change the monetary system because that scares people. Say, change the software.
Yeah, change the software.
I don't want to change the coinage. I don't want to change the bills. I don't want to change the electronic visas. I just want to get rid of, I want to turn service charge up to cover everything and turn interest down till it's gone. And no more death gamble. So that's where we are, really. Now, what do we do while we wait for the government to do it? Well, we have to run our own local economies. Back in 1984, I financed the world's first Let's time bank software. If you Google for Let's, it's still being talked about now 35 years later when they talk about community currencies and, alternative currencies. And
that's what you were on Dragon's Den for.
Yeah, I wanted Dragon's Den to finance a community currency in Brantford, and they weren't bright enough to see it. Now, they chopped my stuff down to a minute where I only got to speak for 15 seconds. But I sued them for defamation, and they had to give me the whole show, which I could then post at my YouTube, the whole show, where I beat them up for 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
The parts they cut out, and my explanation for what they did, too. So I sued them to the Supreme Court of Canada. And just before they stuck me on the air, they made me sign a waiver that said they could defame me. And I said, hey, you shouldn't be able to do that last minute, make me sign a waiver for defaming. You can't do that in the States. Took it to the top, and they said, no, they can't. They can make you sign a waiver that says they can libel and defame you. It means lie about you. So that's my case with the Dragon.
Well, that's the CBC, The CBC is part of the government. That's the people who program the show, and I'm sure they're part of the problem. Anything that's part of the government.
Private media are just as bad. Okay?
I never say, they are just as bad. In fact, they could probably be worse because, you know what? The private media is run by the bank. They're financed by the banksters. At least CBC is financed by the government.
That's right. That's the only difference. I know. Yeah. So, but they're all in it. They're all in it trying to make profit, which sort of makes them all play the game the same way. So, Pierre started all this in 1974. Before then, the loan sharks were only blood-sucking people.
Right.
But after 1974, Pierre let the loan sharks blood-suck governments.
Right. I just want to clear this up for our viewers here. So, before 1974, our government was able to borrow debt-free to finance the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Trans-Canada Highway, all this stuff. After World War II, all this stuff. After 1974, you've got the fool, the economic moron, Pierre Trudeau, who destroyed this country in more ways than one. But he's the one who said, let us pay interest on borrowing money. And you're saying that this is
rates to 60% a few years earlier.
And this is the reason why we're stuck in this debt cycle right now. And you've got. I mean, I remember. I don't know if you know Dennis Kucinich. He was a Congress. Yeah. He said that the governments. You'll have the right wing, which will say, let's cut taxes and cut spending. So that we can pay down our debt, and then you'll have the left wing say, "Let's raise taxes," and then you have people like you and Dennis and Ron Paul who will say, "How about we change the software so that we can change the way that we get our money in the first place, so that we can we can change the reason why this is happening." We're in this big debt crisis now because we're paying such high interest to borrow our own money.
Why represent our collateral with their chips when we can represent them with ours?
Exactly.
I know. So 40 years later, look at how did I lose 100 elections offering people interest-free credit cards? How do you explain that? Who is being laughed at? Am I the guy who's the joke, or are the voters who kept saying no the joke? So I'm betting that their grandchildren are going to look at granddad and say, did you really have a chance for an interest-free credit card at the Bank of Canada and you voted blue?
Or red or orange. They're all part of the. It's all part of the problem. I mean, that's why I consider myself an independent. I want to get to you for a little bit, your history, because you're a very interesting, charismatic figure. What was the very first election that you ever ran in Canada?
1979. I'd just been busted. Okay, I had a big car blackjack game busted, and I decided I'm going to run in the election to legalize gambling.
Okay.
All right. And I said, at the same time, well, we got to legalize prostitution because shy and ugly people got a right to get laid.
Absolutely.
And we got to legalize drugs because that's an issue for you and your doctor, not you and your cop or probation officer. So I was a champion of the gamblers, hookers, and dope smokers in my first election. But someone asked me, what are you going to do about inflation? Don't forget, this was 1979 with like 15, 20% interest rates and inflation.
Yeah, it was bad back then.
I had to think about it, and I did a study, and I said, whoa, how come my casino chips don't inflate, and the government's chips do inflate? It's the same hardware. What's going on? Mm-hmm. So I did my analysis, and that's when I detected the big lie of economics, where they were telling people that raising interest rates fights inflation. You want to lower prices? Raise costs. And they fell for it. And they're still falling for it. Google for inflation, fight inflation. There it is, interest rates. And they're still believing the same bullshit, big lie, completely backwards. I've proven with my math, and here quickly how it works. Mortgage, musical chairs with money. 10 guys borrow 10. Let's say they bring their watch to the pump house and they all borrow 10 liters of liquidity and they go dump it in the economic pool.
Yeah.
Now at the end of the game, they all got to come out with 11.
Yeah.
Pay their interest. So the first 9 guys make it back to the pump house with 11. They get their watch. And the 10th guy, there's nothing left in the pool and he loses his watch. Banker seizes it. Says to the winners, how much you got? 100 liters now? Gee, there's only 9 watches. So they tell you inflation is an increase in the money chasing the watches when it's actually the same money chasing less watches.
Yeah.
I did that on Dragon's Den, and they cut out part 2 to make it look funny. That's why I sued them for defamation.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'm the discoverer of Shift B inflation. Not more money chasing the collateral, same money chasing less collateral after foreclosure.
Absolutely.
Bam. Wow. So 40 years I've been teaching Shift B inflation, and I bet you I'm still the only person in the world talking about it. Imagine that. Not one other person I know is out there explaining how, hey, it ain't too much money, it's too much foreclosure.
Right.
So, but anyway, here we are 40 years later, and I get to tell you something I've been repeating for 40 years, and most people are going to go, never thought about that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be up over there. It can be down over there. So why does economics only teach up over there? How come economics doesn't teach down over there?
Absolutely.
What's going on?
Yeah.
It's a scam. And economics is part of it, making you believe that raising interest rates, profiting the bankers, is going to lower your prices.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine anything as stupid as believing that raising the production costs are going to lower the prices?
Well, I took a lot of economics classes, and I know that that's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But as you said, it's all about making money for a few, and even if that means shafting the rest of us. So since 1979, you said you were you had run in the first election, and you've run in elections ever since.
Whoa! Once I figured out that it was a software problem, not a hardware problem, and that I could reprogram the Bank of Canada's computer to give everybody an interest-free credit card. Since I was the only graduate engineer ever specialized in the mathematics of gambling and who ran my own casino bank, having seen the optimal solution, the optimal model, it was my duty as an engineer when I swore my oath and they gave me my iron ring.
Mm-hmm.
There's an oath that says we can't let the nuts get loose, which mean the nuts on the tire, okay?
Right.
We must be vigilant and we must ensure that life support systems work right. That's our duty. Well, when I saw that they had this feedback, positive feedback on debt, working backwards, I saw it as my duty to fix it. And that's why I kept running in every election since then. I sued the banks in the courts to try and abolish interest rates. And I financed the world's first interest-free time bank software, still being talked about now. So I had a 3-tactical attack for my strategy to abolish interest on your credit cards.
So,
politics, get the power to order it done right. Get a judge with the power to order it done right, because knocking somebody out causes someone to go broke and go hungry. And finally, the third one, start your own time bank barter network. And here's a software to get going, and it's spread around the world, which got me invited to the United Nations in 2000. The fact that let's spread around the world during bad times. And I got invited to go speak at the UN in the Millennium Declaration. And they even we're going to restructure the global financial architecture with an alternative, interest-free, time-based currency.
Right.
Now, the censors cut out interest-free, and they cut out the name Unilets actually, but they left in time-based currency. And as long as it's time-based, it empowers humanity, because right now we got a gold standard of money. I want a time standard of money. Because let's face it, you're not really paying off your debts with gold. You're paying off your debts with work. And that's energy. And that is what a time standard of money would do. It would say your promise to work is good collateral at our central bank. Right now it's not. You got to have a house, you got to have a car, you got to have a piece of rock, yellow rock. But you yourself, you're worth nothing. You get no credit. That's how they treat you.
There are many. Right. No, I just wanted to say quickly, because there are many who would say that if you were to abolish interest rates, then the banks wouldn't have any reason to borrow anymore, and borrowing would come to an end. The economy would collapse. What's your response to that?
Whoa! I didn't say I was going to stop the source of new credits.
Right.
I just said that I'm going to offer you a new source where you don't have to pay any interest.
So you can compete with the old.
You want to keep going to the TD and keep paying them 10%. Well, that's okay. You don't have to use your Bank of Canada interest-free account. Just leave it there.
Okay.
But sharper people are going to say, I think I'm going to cut a check and pay off my credit card.
Ah, okay.
I think I'm going to cut a check and pay off my mortgage. I'm going to cut a check, pay off my car. I'm going to cut a check, pay off all my student loans. Now, all my payments go against the principal, and I've saved all the interest. Okay. Now, I'm not forcing people to stop paying interest to the Royal. They can keep paying interest to the Royal. I don't care if you're that dumb, all right? So when people say, gee, there'll be a crash because no one's going to be able to borrow money from the loan sharks, hey, you got a sugar daddy who's going to give you a loan. Why do you need to keep a loan shark around? So,
that's true.
Central bank accounts are going to wipe out the private banking industry. Okay? It's the loan shark industry. And yes, I swore, who was it? Andrew Jackson said, I killed the bank.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say, I fixed the bank.
Absolutely.
I just got to get rid of the interest in the software, run it like Let's, which is poker chips based on your time, and it works for everybody.
So now, you're basically just competing with the
results.
What? So you have the new system competing with the old system. That's what you're doing.
I'm not going to shut the old system down. If there's some retard who wants to pay interest, go.
Okay.
Until you're busted. What do we care? It's okay. Absolutely. If some guy wants to do heroin, go. What do I care? Okay, just try and keep out of my way. You don't have to
don't go behind a wheel or anything like that.
So I'm saying that with an interest-free credit card, I'm not responsible for anybody anymore. They are. Now, what would happen? Let's say that I wanted to fix the California homeless situation. Mm-hmm. Now, we're told that these people are not just homeless, but they're drug addicts and they're mental and they don't want to leave. Okay, so all I'm saying is, what would happen if I showed up and I said, "Sure, I don't want you to leave your cardboard box, okay? But I'm giving you this interest-free credit card. And if you want to pop over to the hotel over there, get a room, take a shower, have room service, no problem. Go do it, okay? So, and of course, if you start getting comfortable and you're cleaned up, maybe you're going to want to try and go out there and take one of these jobs refereeing baseball games or for kids or whatever to pay your debt back. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying that once everybody gets their interest-free credit card, they got no reason to stay in hell.
Absolutely.
The hell is the manufacture of the shortage of money around them. And now you've just provided them with their own oasis. You got no reason to be sitting there, starving or dying of thirst when you've now got your own access to credits. Absolutely. Friendly credits. Just try and pay it back someday. We're not even going to be in a rush. Take a year to chill out from your experience of 10 years living on the streets, if you must. That's fine by me.
So would that and this is just speaking hypothetically, like this is just playing devil's advocate. Others may say, well, that might increase our debt even more because we're giving away all this money and we're expecting them to pay it back. But
but it's their debt. Now, how do we solve the problem when they don't pay it back? Right. Now, there was a time, potlatch, when a guy died in a BC native community. They gave away all this stuff to everybody. It was a potlatch. It was a celebration. He don't need it no more. Everybody come and get some. Right. Gift time, potlatch.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now, if you go to my site, again, smartestman.ca/AB programs, AB Progs, that has all of my programs for the last 30 years, and one of them is self-insurance, which also can cover other things. Like self-insurance means everybody stops paying fire insurance. All right? Mm-hmm. Keep your premiums. Now, when there's a fire, we pull out the software, we have it divide the cost of the fire over the whole database, and we ask you to chip in $1.20.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if there's no fires, we pay nothing. So do you see how my program, Large Database Insurance, is going to wipe out the insurance industry once we're all connected with a common currency? We can now do self-insurance by large database. I don't need car insurance no more. I just need to know I got 100 million people willing to chip in a penny if I get in an accident, because I'm willing to chip in a penny. So now to the dividend. So also now, when we get back, let's say the robot production comes along. Mm-hmm. Well, Major Douglas of Social Credit said, look, as the lever of technology gets longer and longer, the need for human input to produce what we need goes down and down. So at some point, we're going to have to replace the wage with a dividend. Not something you got to fight to earn, but something you're due because there's so much there. It's your heritage. It's your share. The dividend. Now, you've got the same kind of programming. You can divide out the dividend. Now, the guy who dies in the negative, just like a fire insurance, we simply announce, okay, Freddie the junkie just croaked, and he spent 100 G's in his last few years trying to shake off his torment in hell, and then he died before. He started to play music and do stuff, but then he died. Mm-hmm. So we're all going to chip in our half penny each and take care of Freddie the junkie's negative. Oh, Elvis just died, and he had $100 million. We all get $1. Mm-hmm. So the point is, kids are not going to need their parents' bankroll when the parents die, because all the kids start with their own account. It's your scorecard. Now, do you really want to have your scorecard say, oh, I made 10 grand, 20 grand clear last year, and oh, look, my dad just died and I got 50 more. Is that going to look good on your scorecard? No, my dad died and I got a free 50? You won't need it.
I had this idea that I've been thinking of, and speaking of dividends, the government makes a lot of money off of so-called public corporations, which are supposed to be public, but we don't ever see the profits from that. We don't see anything from that. I've always said that the profits from public corporations, the dividends from public corporations, and the dividends that the government gets from owning a share in something, that should be distributed toward between all of us because that's our money. What do you
Well,
think of that?
well, like the government getting it, it's still all of us. I mean, whether the government's holding it
True, but
or
the government can do what it wants. They don't. We don't. They can decide. Well, we're going to use this money to pay off SNC Lavalin instead of fixing this road. So I want to see.
Well, stop a second. Don't forget, you're still dealing with the existing paradigm that there's not enough money to do both.
True.
There's a lot of unemployed people around who can do both those projects if we come up with the chips. Right. And if the Bank of Canada lends the chips to that government to build that bridge, they're going to get it done, as well as doing the other project too. So we are not limited by the amount of money we have. We are limited by the amount of manpower we have.
Absolutely. Okay. I see what you mean.
Matter of fact, Major Douglas, Louis Evan, remember the social credit Major Douglas, a social credit guy, Louis Evan, had a great explanation, and he called it the stationary engineer example. He says, you're working as a stationary, what do you do? He says, well, I put the wood into the furnace, which pushes out the heat, and then makes steam, and then pushes the engines in the factory. Oh, okay. What would happen if you didn't put in so much wood? Well, then the steam would go down, and the factories would slow down. So you can control how the factories produce by how much steam you provide. Yeah, that's right. So he said that an engineer who would abuse that authority to control the production outcome is as bad as the moneylenders who are doing the same thing. Right. Just like the stationary engineer would be abusing his trust by restricting the flows less than optimal, that's what the bankers do. Right. Now, I mean, the numbers are so incredible. Since in my life, I started complaining about in the 1980s in the courts. Said there's 17 million dead babies a year out of poverty for nothing, and then another up to 40 million with adults and all that. So over 40 years, you're talking 1.6 billion dead people who didn't have to die if they'd had an interest-free credit card 40 years ago. Now, I want you to understand that there are some families who control everything, the owners. I call them the pig people because they hog all the resources till everyone else is starving, okay? The pig people. And that's an insult to pigs. So, you know who I'm talking, Rothschild, Rockefeller.
Rockefellers, the New World Order. We mentioned this on our channel.
Here's the point. Over 1,000 million people were allowed to die from poverty that I could have prevented.
Yeah. And speaking of the Rothschilds, I don't know if many people say that they're the ones who benefit from this current monetary system that we have. They're the ones who control the central banks of all the world. In fact, that's why we're at war with many of these countries. That's why we're trying to go to war with Iran, because they're one of the few nations that don't have this type of system that we stupidly have.
And Libya and North Korea. So, yeah, I see it. But the point is, it's not just them. The whole industry benefits from it.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is, who had the power to turn it off? I have a part of a poem in there where I describe the conveyor belt of death, okay? And you got people who are going off like 40,000 a day, and here's the judge with the power to flick the switch on the conveyor belt of death. Mm-hmm. Now, it's still got momentum. There's still going to be people croaking tomorrow and the day after for a while the machine slows down and we start to get food to the starving, right?
Right.
But that's a fixed number. And it'll start to come down now or later. And I estimated the slab. If you wait 10 days worth of extra dead people, that's your equation of responsibility. So when a judge had the power, like they did many times, to say, I'm going to order the Bank of Canada to restrict their computers to a pure service charge and abolish the interest charge, every 40,000 people a day after that judgment are on his case lab. He was the keeper of usury. Now, people like me working to speed it up, we're abolitionists. It's going to happen someday, if the planet survives, that we fix our accounting software and get rid of positive feedback. But if we don't, we're destroyed. But if we do, then they're going to look back into people who were trying to push it earlier. And they'll be able to tell us, oh, in 2025, we finally ended all the starvation from poverty. And that means that you managed to save everybody who would have been going after that, still croaking if you hadn't done your efforts. So God's going to tell me someday how many people I saved just by working to switch from the hellish system to the heavenly system. And that's really as close as it can get, because having an interest-free credit card is as close as you can get to being in heaven, given our technology and our beautiful world.
Yeah.
If it weren't for our debts, this would be heaven, right?
Absolutely.
Admit it. We got health care, transportation, fuel, entertainment. This is heaven if we didn't have these damn debts.
Exactly. Now,
and Jesus said the same thing. The kingdom of heaven, where you have food and fuel and entertainment but no debts, is at hand to the kingdom where you have the same thing but with debts.
Yeah. So my another devil's advocate question, some people may say, well, interest-free credit cards mean, and this is something I've heard a lot, this means printing more money. Printing more money means we're going to have inflation now.
All
and
right,
I think
so you believe that inflation is an increase in the chips chasing the collateral, right, sir?
Right. Well, that's what people say.
Didn't I just explain there's another possibility?
Yeah.
Now come back when you checked out Shift B.
Yeah.
That's my answer to get rid of slow people. Okay?
Absolutely.
So that inflation is going to be caused. Look, if I get my loan from a chartered bank who create the new chips at interest, how is that so much better than getting it from a central bank that creates the same number of chips with no interest?
Exactly.
Okay, so yes, that they will throw that out, but it's easily rebutted if you understand Shift B. And what you're really saying is saying the only difference with what I propose is that I ain't paying no more interest. Yeah. Everything else I'll pay. Everything else is the same. Why do you think everything changes when I'm only changing one thing?
Absolutely.
And poker chips are a perfect model, and say, works just like poker chips. What don't you understand about how the poker chips work? You see people walking in, they're either pledging a car, or they're putting in cash, or they're giving a marker, saying, I'll pay it later. What is it you don't understand?
Absolutely.
Now we always had, the economists sitting at the poker table, and every time a new guy came in with a rack of $500 in new chips, he'd start screaming, inflation, inflation, until we reassured him, no, there's more collateral at the cage. Okay? But that's what an economist sees. He sees more money, and he just thinks inflation without even linking it to the collateral.
Absolutely.
So the major weakness of economics is they never link the money to the collateral.
Right. And so if we understand what the collateral is, then we won't need to worry about inflation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. Inflation is generated by the seizure of the watch. Right. Okay? Remember, interest knocks a guy out of production and results in some of that production being unpurchasable because all the other production was sold at a higher price. Mm-hmm. So, interest creates the inflation by knocking people out so we can't get their stuff. So, without that knockout, there can be no inflation. Everything is saleable. There's a poker chip to match every piece of collateral. Every car has the required number of tokens issued in its production. And that's how stuff will be valued. How many chips were issued in its production, and that's the number of chips we want back as it depreciates.
Absolutely. So then, so basically just knock this whole inflation thing out of the park there.
It can't happen with poker chips. Remember, poker chips don't have interest, and poker chips don't inflate. Now, you were going to ask, you mentioned guns a while ago.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to go back to the same issue. And same with abortion. I want to deal with those two really hard ones, okay? Guns. people say, I need my gun for protection, my personal protection. And I go, I understand it's so vicious and violent out there. But now that I gave every bum an interest-free credit card so that he can go and get anything he wants with his credit card, he doesn't have to mug you anymore. And now that there have been no muggings for a year, why do you want to walk around with a killing device?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I see where you're coming from.
When the threat is gone, you don't need
right.
a killing device.
My thing is that, just like, with the I like the slogan that you have, no cops in sex, gambling, or rock and roll. That's your slogan. I would include that in the gun. It's not, honestly.
Okay,
I'm
not taking away your guns.
No, I know you're not. I just want to explain to you. Well, not explain. I just want to say my thing is not necessarily the muggers. My thing is the government. I have my gun.
Whoa. We got a government who's giving you interest-free credit cards.
Well, that's true.
What can you have against your sugar daddy government?
No, but you know what, though?
Honestly,
governments also changed, too.
I love Canada, where the only people with guns are cops and robbers. Well, 99% of the people don't have a killing machine.
And that's the thing.
I love Canada.
But you know what, though?
Without the robbers, there's only going to be the cops.
But that's the thing, though. There are a lot of dirty cops out there.
What are you scared of?
Well, there's a lot of dirty cops out there.
No. You're talking about the old paradigm where it's mortgage and there's crooks and there's inducements. I'm saying when everybody's got an interest-free credit card, no one's doing any more crime.
So you're saying that your system is almost like a buyback system. There won't be any need to be protected. There won't be any need. It's not that you're taking it away. It's just that people are saying, well, you know what? I feel free enough that I can...
I watched my neighbor's kid get in there and blow his little sister apart. I don't think I need this in my house.
Right.
Okay? That's going to be someday when the world is safe. But not before the world is safe. Right. So I'm saying that I can make the world safe with interest-free credit cards, so that most people are going to voluntarily say, I don't need this no more. Right. Let me get to abortion now, because that's a big one. Now, the arguments are, it's murder! And the other argument is, we can't afford the sixth mouth. We're already starving. And the other side goes, but it's murder! And the other side says, but we can't afford the sixth mouth. And the other side goes, but it's murder! And the other side says, but we can't afford it, right? Right?
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
Is there anything else? Those are the two sides.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you can't afford number 6 because he got his own credit card? You don't want to raise him, let him go live in a hotel. He could be a Beethoven. We don't know. Okay? So I'm just saying that in my world, everybody gets an interest-free credit card. So now when they go, but it's murder, I tell you what, my dear, you don't want to bring Junior to term? I'll give you 50 G's to do it. Yeah. Will you take him to term, spend the 9 months? No. I tell you what, I'll give you 100 G's. Will you take him to term? Because we want to see if he turns out into something productive.
Absolutely.
No?
So with your system, there won't be any need to have to go through this abortion thing because people will be financially secure already. They want
their babies.
Yeah.
They want their babies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they produce children, and the children produce...
My final point is this.
Yeah.
Let's say she says, okay, for $250,000, I'll bring him to term. Okay? Guess what? We stick it on Junior's tab. We bribed your mama into letting you live, but you got to pay the bribe.
I think one of the best collaterals, now that you think about it, the best securities for interest-free loans would be, as I said, with the system that I asked you about to see what you thought about, giving the money back to the people. Well, if they don't have the money to pay it back, then we just give that money to the government, and then they can pay off the security. The money that we would naturally get from our crown corporations, our dividends, all this stuff. If you want to pay it back through that money, I think that would be a good way to pay that off. I don't know what you think about it.
I'm just saying that you have I want everybody to have a dividend on their share in the Corporation of Canada.
Absolutely.
On their share of the robot paychecks.
Absolutely.
I don't want 10 guys owning all the robots and being taxed and we get a pittance. Yeah. I want a share of the robot production for everybody. Now, that was what I meant by Major Douglas when he talked about the lever of technology. He said, someday we just won't need to do the work to get the stuff. What are we going to do to get the stuff then if we haven't got the work? A dividend, a share. It's your due because we got so much. That was the Major Douglas great expose of what was going to happen someday with the robot revolution. And the robots are here. And they're going to take our jobs and massively displace us. But no one's going to feel bad if you got the robot's paycheck, right?
Absolutely.
You're going to feel bad going to lay in the sun on the beach because the robot's doing the work and you got his paycheck? Of course you're not going to feel bad. But you got people going, what do we do when there's no work? Lie on the beach with the paycheck, you moron. With the robot paycheck.
I love you, man. You're awesome. I have one final question, and then I'll let you just end this out with something that you want to say. Many people will say, well, this sounds all nice, but it also sounds risky. When has this been tried before? I would argue that, the old Social Credit Party of Canada, this is the old social, not the new social credit like the Reform and stuff, but they had tinkled with this a bit. But do you know anywhere where this has been tried? Maybe not fully, but to a certain extent. Fully.
Okay, let's go back 1200. In 1100. That was King Henry I.
Yeah.
Didn't have enough gold, so what he did was he took a stick and he stamped it, said 10 pounds of gold. He split the stick in two. He said, this is the king's poker chip and this is the king's stub, so that I can make sure they tally up by the wood grains. And I'm going to give this 50-pound stick of gold to the Earl of Nottingham, and I'm saying use some of your gold to build a bridge.
Right.
And that'll pay your taxes when comes the time. So King Henry I started the tally system that lasted for 700 years.
Right.
And was supplying a lot of financing for the kings in those days. Now, the Romans used copper money, okay? Aes grave. So they had their own republican kind of money. And Sparta used their own clay poker chips and didn't participate in the usury game. The greatest book on banking and money in antiquity is called The Babylonian Woe by David Astle. I met him once. I've read this book like a dozen times. It's so incredibly packed with information you can't get anywhere else on loan sharking, the creation of credit, the control of kings in antiquity. The Babylonian Woe. And it's online. You can see a PDF of it there. And originally, 20 years ago, I did book report, and that was the only way you'd have been able to find out about it. But now it's been published. Same with Tragedy and Hope, Carol Quigley's great book. I did an analysis of it and published it. And for the first 10 years on the internet, only my analysis was the only way you could find out what his book said. But now you can see his book and even buy it. So I have been participating in this effort to get the message out, but it ain't working. Because let's face it, most people are dragged down, nose to the grindstone, paying their bills. 90% of the people don't have time to watch more than a half an hour of mainstream media news at night. And that's packed with bullshit that keeps them believing that inflation is fought with interest rates. Okay, whatever stories they need. Let me give you some really funny ones, okay? Stupid stuff that humans have been led to believe. Did you see those planes hit the towers on 911?
Yeah.
Did you know jumbo jets can't do 500 miles an hour at sea level? Air's too thick. So what did you see?
We've talked about that too. In fact, there was a documentary that I ran across a few years ago.
Alex, probably.
No, it wasn't that. It was before 9/11. It was a doc. This was actually from a mainstream, which kind of shot the whole 9/11 story out of the air. It said that the World Trade Center was built with certain materials which could withstand the impact of a fully fueled jet. This was a documentary. This was a documentary made in 1999, 2 years before 9/11, and then we see.
My point is about the scientific, illogical points.
Mm-hmm.
Jumbo jets can't do 500 miles an hour at sea level. So what did everybody see? Aluminum cannot slice through steel and concrete. So what was that Roadrunner cutout we saw in the building? We should have seen a splat. There's no way, aluminum going at subsonic speed is going to cut through steel, especially a little wingtip cutting through steel. So that is another physical impossibility. And last but not least, gasoline can't melt steel. Right. Jet fuel cannot melt steel. Whatever melted those buildings wasn't jet fuel.
Since we're on the 9/11 thing here, I just want to very, very quickly, if you could just, so are you saying that it wasn't planes? I've always asked.
Couldn't be planes. I'm saying it couldn't be planes.
Oh.
It could not be jumbo jets. It might have been something disguised with CGI, like a warplane. But I'm saying it couldn't be a jumbo jet. That's my point.
So maybe it was redesigned in a certain way then.
It still couldn't be a jumbo jet because they're too big to go that fast through that air.
Right.
So whatever we think we saw, it wasn't it. It wasn't a jumbo jet.
It was definitely something, but it wasn't a jumbo jet.
We're not even sure if it was even more than CGI.
Right.
Because all we see, most people, is what they saw on TV. Okay? And a few liars down below to pass out the word that they saw something.
Now,
a lot of people didn't see anything. So, anyway, I'm just saying that these are the physical inconsistencies. 1, jumbo jets don't do 500 miles an hour. 2, aluminum doesn't cut steel. And 3, gas doesn't melt steel. Bam. Especially with these incredibly warped trusses with no cracks, Something unusual, irregular, Star Trek-y happened to those buildings. Right. It wasn't a collapse as you would expect. It would have fallen over. It wouldn't have just turned to dust. It would have fallen over. It was already starting to fall over, and then something stopped it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Turned to dust. I saw steel girders turn to dust. Mm-hmm. So something unusual happened, and they got the world to believe that jumbos did more than 500 miles an hour, aluminum cut through steel, and gas fires melted steel. They got people to believe 3 completely stupid things that are completely impossible, and it's still believed. Isn't that funny? So, yeah, it's almost as if they're aliens making fun of us. What can we make? Hey, we made them believe that raising their interest costs was going to lower the prices. You got to admit, that's good, right? I mean, every generation in 40 years, 50 years have been told that raising interest costs will lower your prices. Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
I just want to, we're almost out of time here, but I want to just make it clear to the viewers that John Turmel, this legend, I've enjoyed talking to you. Honestly, I think you should run in the Durham election district so I can vote for you, and I would go knock on doors for you.
I missed a chance. I think I ran in Durham once.
Maybe you did. Maybe you did. You've run in so many elections.
Maybe you weren't born yet.
Maybe I wasn't. I don't think I was born. You've run in. This guy's run in so many elections since 1979. He's running all the by-elections, the election.
Yeah, I just finished number 100.
Founded 3 parties, 2 parties, the Abolitionist Party, Social Credit of Ontario. I don't know if you founded that one. The Pauper Party. Yeah, the Pauper Party. I mean, you are like the greatest politician never known. And I'm glad that you have, just blessed us with your presence on Arana Nation.
Last thing. I also have been leading the fight in the courts to legalize marijuana for the last 20 years.
Well, real
legalization.
I hope it's real legalization and not this fake Justin Tackett and Mac Daddy Trudeau legalization.
I made them drop 4,000 marijuana charges in 2003 by going on Parliament Hill to smoke a doobie and be arrested at the East Block door. Right. So, but they called off the new law, and they never brought back a new law.
Well,
so
now they have this whole government-run pot system, which is a joke. All the provinces are losing money from marijuana. It should be a free market system. And
absolutely. I mean, the point is, this is not a dangerous herb like they've pretended it is.
And I used to be one of those
the most innocuous herb. All the worst that happens is you fall asleep.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I mean, I've seen people on overdose and they just fall asleep.
Well, I used to be one of those anti-pot people, but you know what? I think that alcohol is more dangerous than pot, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Alcohol is a disinhibitor. It makes you do stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Pot is not disinhibitor. It makes you, it's an inhibitor.
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's...
Makes you not want to rock the boat.
Yeah, it makes you lazy.
You play your accordion better.
Yeah.
Ask any musician if marijuana is an impairment or an enhancement of motor skills.
So I want to get people to understand. So Mr. John Turmel, he wants to eliminate interest rates for the Bank of Canada, and he wants to make it go further so that you can borrow money interest-free. This would do a lot of things. I mean, first of all, there would be no more causes for all these wars, because many of these wars are just to change the monetary system, really. A lot of poverty would be eliminated. Debt would be eliminated. And Canada has some of the largest...
Now, you got your debt at the Bank of Canada, but all payments go against the principal.
Right. I mean, I shouldn't say eliminate, but...
You're gonna pay for all the goodies you spent during your student years, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no interest.
Yeah.
But you're going to be successful, so what are you worried about?
Exactly.
With no interest, debts are easy to pay.
Exactly. And last question: when do you plan on just going until you drop dead, or are you retiring?
Well, there was a good article in, I think it was CTV or CBC during my 99th election last year.
1 second, I'll be right back.
And it said basically, do you think I want it on my tombstone that he quit?
Exactly.
So the point is, it's my duty to pull off the Spock fix for my civilization, because I'm the only engineer with that particular combination of skills, gambling and engineering.
Why don't you...
So, given it's my duty, and I'm probably the only one with that duty, I can't stop until it's fixed.
Why don't you do like what Trump has done, and he went into one of the main parties, and he fixed the party from within. I mean, with mixed success. I mean...
No. He was a winner on his own, on the outside, with his own financing.
Right.
I'm the king of the paupers. I've been living on the verge of broke my whole career, playing poker to pay my bills, and get enough to go run an election and come back, play again, and go run another one, and come back, go to court, come back, play again. So, but since the last 3 years when I got my pension, I don't have to go play poker no more.
Okay.
And it's nice not to have the stress of combat on a daily basis anymore. Okay. So I live cheap and...
Would you ever try to run for leader of any of these main parties? Would you ever try to do that?
Well, I toyed with the idea in 1984 by seeing if I could organize some greenback. Okay, greenbacks were a party in the United States pushing for interest-free credits. The farmers' people, greenbacks, and so I called it the greenback wing of the Tories, which I joined for maybe 6-8 months or whatever to see if it worked. And I just realized that you can't go into a party that's established, because the rich guys own it.
Right.
It's as simple as that, and there's nothing you can do. That's why I've always said I'll just stay on the outside. And
well, I'll tell you this: if I were to ever become the leader of a party, I would insist that you run in Brantford, Brant, or wherever, whichever constituency you choose. And when I become the prime minister or the premier, I would want you to run the Treasury board so that we can change this financial system. And
well, they make fun of me because I have often said that when I get elected, I'm going to spend the morning uploading the software to fix it, upgrading the software. Then I'm going to spend my afternoon calling up people for a poker game to spend my retirement party. I'm not here to be a functionary, a civil servant.
Yeah.
I'm here to switch the disc, fix the software, and then go back to playing poker for
Well, that's
fun.
not something to be made fun of. That's honorary. That's what we all should be doing. You're not a politician. You're a statesman. You're here to fix the problem and then leave.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
right. I don't want the job.
Absolutely. Well,
but I've been persistent at trying to get it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what, Mr. Turmel, it's been an honor to have you on. I want to have you on
That was fun.
Yeah, I want to have you on regularly. You are very underestimate. You're very smart, and I can see why the media wants to silence you, and why sometimes you're not allowed in the debates. I mean, you run in these constituencies; they don't even let you in the debates. They don't want their system to collapse, and so that's why I came and I got you out, and you're here, and it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you spreading the good message, the good news, okay?
This will definitely not be the last time people hear about you on Arana Nation.
Good. Glad.
Well, you take care now. I'm going to end the transmission now, and this is the Arana Nation.